Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Friday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. The draft is less than a week away, and reports indicate the Lakers might trade down. We discuss next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcast. It's always going to be free. It's never going to be behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show. Lots to cover on the show today. You can see it right there on our new and improved rail for those who are watching on YouTube. I want to let everybody know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So we're going to try to get into a couple things about the CBA and how that impacts the Lakers. A rest plan for LeBron that was proposed by a member of the Locked On Lakers community when we put out our mailbag, Andy. But we're going to start by talking about trading down in the draft. Multiple reports there. And philosophically, you could argue that this question is related to everything else that we might talk about during the entire episode.
Yeah, I mean, there's that question of the Lakers' ability to draft extremely well, whether you're talking about low in the first round or even in the second round. And if they could perhaps trade down for multiple picks, like trades, this is just purely made up, the 17 for the 20 and the 31 from another team, it would give them two cracks at the apple in an area that they are particularly good at. And more importantly, the ability to build out a roster in a more cost-controlled fashion, because they're going to have, just like every team around the league, they're going to have considerations when it comes to this new CBA, the way it can be very restrictive if you go past certain, aprons and whatnot. It can become also very, what would be the word, punitive, I guess, financially. They really start hammering you for it beyond whatever Jeannie Buss would be willing to spend. It starts becoming just very, very prohibitive. So this could play into a Lakers' strength while actually helping them maintain a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah, and so, this is something that it's not just us supposing. It has been reported around. Sam Vecini of The Athletic, Jonathan Givony at ESPN and Draft Express also saying the Lakers are considering trading down. It's funny too when you think about there are two good reasons, I think, for the Lakers just in terms of prospects. I think there are a lot of people who would argue that 17 better. It's better to draft at 17 than 25. Like you get a better, you have 8 more players, whatever that is that you can choose from, and all that. But I don't necessarily. I would love to see a breakdown of the sort of historical success rate of guys drafted around 17 versus guys drafted around 24, 25, 26. Because I feel like my gut instinct is there's probably not that big of a difference. We, for example, in the Locked On Lakers, the Locked On Big Board, NBA mock draft that every team participates in, we have Jet Howard from Michigan going at 17 to the Lakers. That is not based on you and I doing extensive scouting on Jet Howard. I've never seen him play, but what we have done is gone through a lot of other mock drafts. We look at his skill set. He's a shooter. He's a wing. LeBron thrives around shooters. It makes a lot of sense. I've seen him go to the Lakers in mock drafts. I've also seen him big boarded, so to speak, around like 24, 25, 26. So the range in prospects, Andy, is massive. And the opinions are, very wildly once you get past like 12 or 13 in the draft. So one person's 17 might end up being another person's 25 anyway. I think the Lakers could do well if they bumped back.
Yeah, I mean, we had somebody commenting to us on Twitter at Cam Brothers that the Lakers should look to trade the pick, package it to bring back a proven NBA player to, really aggressively stay in as win now mode as possible, which is, to be clear, defensible. I mean, if
Trevor Lane, for example, our friend at Lakers Nation today had, on Thursday had a great tweet, like, who is a realistic player that you would trade the 17 pick for? And it wouldn't be just this, probably instantly, like Buddy Hield. Other guys, maybe not, but that one is, I raise my hand and I do it. And I'm a huge advocate of keeping the pick. But sometimes if you can get a really good player, you do that.
Right. But someone hit us up on Twitter at Cam Brothers with a list of players that had gone at 17 over the last 15 years. And in this person's assessment, he's like, you're only looking at about a 15% hit rate as far as a useful NBA player. And I think this person was undervaluing some of the players that were actually on this list. Like, there are a few, I'm like, I don't know how you're doing the math on this, but this is not 15%. But also, too, as I responded to him, you can't evaluate this by looking just at 17, because there's a lot of variances and, frankly, even randomness that determines each year's draft. And, what certain teams need, might lead to them taking somebody else when a guy who ended up having a better career went 2 or 3 spots behind them, but they may not have had a need at that position. There's a lot of different.
Or maybe they're just bad at drafting.
Right. It could be a team that's terrible at this, whatever. But what I said to him is, you really need to look, if you want to figure out, roughly the range you could do at 17, you would need to look historically at about 15 through 20, maybe even 15 through 22, and then see all the players that are roughly taken in that range. And I think the odds, particularly for a team like the Lakers that are good at this, at finding, if nothing else, an NBA rotation player, which means you are an above average player, because average NBA players often struggle to stay in a rotation on a regular.
End. I mean, if you're talking about a legitimate top 7, top 8, a guy who's 8, 7, 8, 9, 10, I think most of those guys are probably average, but I don't want to, we don't need to debate that particular point.
Right. I mean, if you can find a legitimate rotation player in the NBA at 17, that is a really valuable use of that asset, especially when you're talking about a player that's going to be cost controlled for a few years. When you're talking about the Lakers having LeBron and AD alone are almost $100 million themselves. Right. The Lakers are going to be limited in certain respects with how they go about building their roster. And as we've talked about a lot, it's really important that they build out some quality depth, because, as I think we're going to end up discussing over the course of the show, but we certainly have before, you have to price in some absences and or rest or both for LeBron and Anthony Davis.
Right. The question in that scenario is whether or not the guys you would get at 27 and the extra the extra second rounder, the 33 and then plus your own 47, whether or not that would actually create more quality depth. The Lakers have a better chance of coming up with a player who could play in those situations, but the odds are that they probably wouldn't. 2 or 3 years from now, maybe, but the odds are that they probably won't find a rotation player at 17 either. At least not one that contributes right away on a team with title aspirations. Again, Lakers have better chances than other teams, but historically the answer is probably not. But I just think it's important to emphasize.
But they might be able to find really quick. They might be able to find a player good enough to soak up some regular season minutes.
Right, but that maybe, but soak up some. If LeBron is out for a little bit, or you're resting him, he can play 10, 15 minutes, whatever it might be, or maybe if you get lucky, a little bit more. But I just think what the important thing is to me is 17. It's on the fence there, but generally speaking, I would say 17. It's not 8, 7, 8, 9, 10, where you think you might be able to pick a guy who can make an impact right away. You're already in probably not. And there may not be a huge difference between 17 and 22, 23. Other things that impact what the choices the Lakers could make here are related to aspects of the new CBA that designed to keep teams from spending a ton of money, something the Lakers have historically done. So we'll talk about some of those things next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Bird Dogs, the makers of shorts and pants that feature the future of comfort, which is built in underwear. It's stitched inside the pants and the shorts, almost like a layer of boxer brief that are at one with the clothing. They call it Comfort Kingdom, and you can rule this land in your Bird Dogs. You can look better, feel great wearing your Bird Dogs. The stretchy fabrics makes my legs, your legs, everybody's legs look great. They're comfy, more so than other pants and shorts. They're versatile. You can wear the same pants or shorts on a golf course, work meeting, on a date, and they are forgiving. If you need a little extra stretch in the midsection area, smidge more room, nothing to be ashamed of, especially when you can look good in the process. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA, and when you enter that promo code, again, LockedOnNBA, they will throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler with every order. It's awesome. That in and of itself is worth going there. So get your shorts, get your pants, get your Yeti style tumbler, get some Bird Dogs.
So Andy, one of the big things here about the new CBA, as you mentioned, it does put a premium on finding cost-controlled young talent. That is certainly an argument for the Lakers to find as many picks as they can in this and future drafts. But it kind of gets to the yin and yang of their situation, which is you always have to have at least some semblance of an eye towards the future. But when you have a 39-year-old LeBron James and an Anthony Davis, who some people at least don't trust to age gracefully, you got to put the pedal down now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Lakers are in extreme win now mode. You know,
that sounds like double secret probation, extreme win now mode.
I mean, look, when the guy that is the centerpiece of your team is 39 in season 21 with 1 billion miles on the odometer, he has the equivalent in playoff games of like a 4.5 to 5 year NBA career. Just that alone, you have to be thinking about everything in terms of immediacy. And I'm sure if you asked LeBron, his preference would be trade that pick for somebody that we know can help in the rotation now. If you told LeBron about the financial implications, he would say, figure it out. Like, you know, that's your job to figure it out. My job is to try to win you a championship. It's not my concern what it does to the payroll, even though I'm sure LeBron is smart enough to recognize one thing often can lead to the other. Your ability to win a championship can actually be directly affected by that payroll. But also, too, I think it becomes really important, you know, potentially using that 17th pick. If the Lakers do some of the things I'm expecting them to do, like retain Austin Reeves, like retain Rui Hachimura, I am running with the expectation right now that D'Angelo Russell will be back. I don't think it's a given, but if I had to guess, I think he will be, or if nothing else, I think there's a very good chance of it because I don't anticipate the Lakers having a better opportunity to replace his skill set through either trades or certainly on the open market.
I think I don't know if it will be him that will be back specifically. I would be surprised if they let his salary slot / quality of player slot just go away because they didn't want to pay.
I feel like the roster is going to end up expensive enough. You know, maybe they retain Mo Bamba and or Malik Beasley to have another tradable asset there to make a move at the deadline. I think it's going to end up expensive enough that you may end up needing to keep that pick, use it on an actual draft prospect. Maybe that's somebody that ends up included in a trade down the road with Malik Beasley or whatever. But I feel like
that's also, by the way, an argument for using him. I was going to make picking up more picks is you have more opportunities to create more value to be able to arrange to have more appealing pieces to trade down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I understand that they are in win now mode, but at the same time, you do have to be thinking in certain respects about making sure that you have some semblance of a foundation when this thing eventually runs its course, because frankly, the Lakers are far, far closer to the end than the beginning. I mean,
of this window. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, they can see the finish line without the use of binoculars. Like It's pretty close. Like,
I mean, they're like right up against the window. They're like peering out the window.
Exactly. So you do have to think about this with some degree of pragmatic. I mean, again, if you have an opportunity to bring in somebody with that 17th pick that would make an instant impact, okay, fine. But if it's for a run-of-the-mill rotation player, I can see where the Lakers think a little bit more big picture than LeBron would prefer, and probably some fans would prefer.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also too. It's like, what are you getting? And the new CBA, like you talk about it, like one of the things that I think is going to be so fascinating about this offseason, including the draft, is like, we heard on Thursday, like it was a Wednesday or Thursday, I forget what it was. Bradley Beal, they're talking much more about trading Bradley Beal. Mercifully, the Lakers have not come up in this conversation because I don't think anybody here wants anything to do with Bradley Beal.
It's not even that.
It's a year.
It's
ridiculous. It's impossible to do. But the point is, even like the Lakers don't want to pay Bradley Beal $50 million a year. I don't know who does, and that's kind of the point. So there's two things going on here. There's Jaylen Brown's super max and stuff, like all of these questions become incredibly difficult when the salary scale is still huge, but the penalties aren't just punitive in terms of the amount of money you have to pay, but also the restrictions that it puts on your roster. And then from there, okay, now if let's say Washington does trade Brad Beal, what does that mean for Kyle Kuzma? Are they less likely to bring him back? Does that mean Kristaps Porzingis, who played very well last year, ends up staying in Washington, or does he end up on the market? Like how? And that it's not that the Lakers are necessarily interested or could get either one of those guys, but that has a ripple effect on how people use their cap space, which has a ripple effect on what the Lakers might have to pay Rui Hachimura, might have to pay D'Angelo Russell. So the kind of the intermoving pieces here are really interesting. And if the Lakers pony up and pay Hachimura, they pay Russell, they figure out a way to bring back Lonnie Walker for $7 million. Well, all these other things, it actually makes a lot of sense for them to go ahead on the other end to try to find 3 or 4 cost-controlled players to put at the end of the roster, because there probably won't be space to play them anyway, except for those 9, 10, 11, 12 when LeBron is sitting, when Anthony Davis is sitting, whatever, because don't forget, Max Christie, they expect to be a guy who can play a little bit next year, but he's only, what are you going to be, 20 once the regular season starts? So, I mean, even with their track record, 3 guys, 4 guys who are in that 19, 20, 21 range, age-wise, 22, to be able to play, it's unlikely. I mean, I think there's, Austin Reeves, for example, is a little older, came in a little more prepared, and maybe that had a little something to do with his ability to step in beyond just his talent.
It's going to be rough for all these teams, but it's really going to be difficult for a team like the Lakers when one of your huge contracts is centered around a 39-year-old guy. And then that doesn't even get into the elements of Anthony Davis and some of the things that, can make him on a $40 million deal at times feel dicey. And it, again, creates that necessity of finding more cost-controlled avenues when you can. And again,
right. But in a context where you're like, okay, but what if we needed to pay Buddy Hield $20 million next year? Okay, well, maybe we do that. And so I think I agree with you. I think it will eventually put downward pressure on, Jokic is going to continue to make whatever the maximum is, but teams are going to think really hard about, are we really going to max out Brad Beal the next time he's
a guy like Michael Porter Jr. got his big money at just the right time, because somebody like him, who looks like he is ideally slotted as the 3rd or 4th best player on a championship team, I don't think he's going to get the type of money on his next deal that he has right now.
Sure. Even like this, like a Jaylen Brown, who's a great young player. That's going to, with every GM and the CB, the capologist in every office, had an interesting idea for how to play LeBron next year that was put out on the Cam Brothers Twitter page when we were doing the mailbag. And we wanted to get into that because it is related to these topics. We'll do it next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Game Time. Years ago, some friends of mine and I, we went to go see LL Cool J in LA, really last minute. Weren't sure how to get tickets, got them from a scalper. They turned out to be fake. And after that experience, I was like, I will never go through something like that again, because buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. And it's not, because of Game Time. And it's the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports and music, comedy shows, theater, anything near you, with killer deals on last-minute tickets and the best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets, start getting hyped for the fun. And I love the way they offer images of seat views. They got the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection. The Game Time guarantee means you always get the best price. And if you find tickets in the same section of row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in this country. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps. Tickets go directly to your phone and you're set. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
So my apologies, I closed out the wrong window and now I don't have the tweet in front of me. But the basic idea that was presented on the Cam Brothers Twitter feed, thank you for hanging out and answering the question, was the proposition that you would intentionally, essentially play LeBron every other game. That you go into the season with the idea that we are going to load manage the bleep out of this guy. So, without getting bogged down in the literal, could you set up a thing where he plays every other game, or like the design where he plays between 40 and 50? It brings up the interesting, LeBron will say something to the effect of, I'm going to play as many games as I can, and so on and so. But what is a reasonable plan? I feel like the Lakers, especially with him coming off potentially foot surgery, need to go into the season with our goal is to play LeBron 63 games. If we never say it out loud, but the idea that he's going to play 80, we're ditching that from the beginning. We are going to build days of rest in, whatever it is. How would you approach this if you were the Lakers?
I would look to be more cautious with his minutes as opposed to his game totals.
Interesting.
Because I think it is hard. First of all, I think it's just harder to plan an X amount of games because you never know when injuries might take place anyway.
Right.
I would look to try to keep his minutes more under control, try to keep the stress under control. But the truth is, I also think that's potentially a more feasible plan than X amount of games and really trying to be stringent, because then you could start getting into trouble with, what if Anthony Davis isn't available, or Austin Reeves is out for a few weeks, Hachimura, and somebody else who matters that's on this team next season isn't available. We saw what happened last year when the Lakers had to scramble to get themselves into the playoff mix. They turned it into a really long run, but it caught up to them. They were basically playing playoff level basketball from mid-February on. It would be more difficult to avoid something like this if you go into the season saying LeBron is going to miss these games. We have them already marked out on the calendar. That is the plan. We're not straying from it. You could start really putting yourself behind the 8 ball.
That's why, that's why we've been talking so much, and the everydayers are going to hear it throughout, is, depth, why depth is just so critical for this team, and why is particularly top end depth. That's why it matters when you bring back D'Angelo Russell, or if you don't bring him back. If they traded the 17 and whatever for Buddy Hield, they probably let Russell go.
I wouldn't do that, but
I'm just saying, I think there is a good chance that they would do that. And then, you sign other guards or whatever. I don't know if they would bring back Hield, sign Russell for $20 million and Hachimura for $20 million. Now you're blowing past aprons. But I'm just saying, like in my mind,
Hield. I mean, because you've brought him up now a few times. Hield's an expiring, so I mean, it's one year.
But I'm talking about just next year's salaries.
I understand that, but
he's going to make $19 million next year.
I don't think Buddy Hield is a good enough player that you let D'Angelo Russell go. I think he's too one-dimensional player for that, to me personally.
Oh, fair, right? And that's fair.
I don't think that makes you better enough that it's worth doing.
I think that. I mean, I think it could. I mean, if it were up to me, I'd keep all these people and I'd keep adding and let them figure it out. But I'm just saying, like, if you feel like you're improving, if you feel like, or maybe you let somebody else go, at that point, you certainly aren't picking up the option on Beasley, unless you either be part of the trade or you let him go. But point being, if you can find ways to improve, if you really feel like this player is going to elevate you, particularly in the top half of your rotation, the Lakers have to take advantage of any of those opportunities that they have because of what you're talking about, because of the dual things that they have to do between not wanting to spend February, March, and April busting ass to try to get into the playoffs and have hopefully avoid the play-in, and keeping your stars healthy. Those are two things that you do not, you want to be able to keep your stars healthy without having that pressure.
Yeah. I mean, I remember the Kobe's final year where, the retirement tour, and he and the organization went through the schedule, and they really mapped out games Kobe would play, games Kobe would rest. A lot of those were home games. Ultimately, the logic was a lot of these home fans at least had more of an opportunity, if nothing else, to see Kobe one last time in person. In the meantime, the game that he would play in Boston or Indiana or Oklahoma City, wherever, this could be the last time he's in that place. And Kobe wanted one final shot at all those, but you also wanted to get him through the season whole. The difference there, though, is the Lakers had no stakes other than getting Kobe through the season.
The whole point of the season was orchestrating Kobe farewell. The team sucked.
No, and look, that became the priority of the team, even at the expense of developing Julius Randle, developing D'Angelo Russell, Jordan Clarkson, Larry Nance Jr. Like all of those guys, their personal growth took a back seat to the number one goal of getting Kobe through the season. But that doesn't work if you're actually looking to make the playoffs. I don't know if you can do it that strict with LeBron. Again, especially knowing that the guy you're asking to pick up the slack in Anthony Davis has issues of his own.
Mm-hmm. The challenge for the team, maybe this is something we can talk about. We're going to have Mike Garcia on for Tuesday's show. For Wednesday ahead of the draft. To get ready. It's like that's basically random. So like the final draft thoughts before we everything happens on Thursday. Great Lakers insider in terms of the draft. He's somebody you ought to be following if you're not at Canyon Driver, is how you find him on Twitter. Excuse me. But like maybe later in the week, it's really easy for the Lakers to bring back a team that is as good as it went to the Western Conference Finals last year. Improving that team is the tricky part. Like they're significantly improving it in meaningful ways. And outlining how to do that, I think is the really hard part for Pelinka. We had a great trade deadline. And now if he can nobody can expect the leap from what they were to what they became. But they don't need that anymore. They need if they could just goose it by 10%, you're really cooking with something.
Look, maybe the improvement just comes with continuity and not having to figure out everything on the fly. Yeah. Like, in a lot of ways they were making it up. Maybe it isn't, tweaking your talent very much. Yeah. That may be the greatest luxury that they have if they run this thing back. It's not even who do you bring on top of it. It's just the idea of being able to have a normal season with everyone, and then hopefully they all stay healthy.
Yeah, and that's your baseline. If nothing else, that's your baseline. It's a nice place to start, but a little sprinkle of extra talent there wouldn't hurt. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show and hang out and leave us questions and comments and all that stuff, which you really do want to use going forward into the summer as we get through the draft, into summer league, into the offseason, free agency, and so on and so forth. Again, next week ahead of the draft, Mike Garcia at Canyon Driver. Going to be a great draft preview right before the draft. We'll have people on afterwards over the few days after, so everybody has an idea of, who they picked and how they might fit in, whether or not the Lakers did well. So plenty of draft stuff to look forward to, and we will see everybody next week.